Hello and welcome to our third live chat of the year on YouTube. Hello, I'm Patricia Botero Saint Jean, founder of Open for Business and business research strategist. So, what do? I help corporate employees who are burned out transition from being an employee to becoming a business owner and entrepreneur so that they can live the life they love. So today, last Thursday, we talked about starting a business as a baby boomer and a Gen Xer. In other words, that video was for you if, like me, the business think of you as being too old and or you disagree. So we talked about starting a business after 50ish. This week's topic, as I promised, is about financing, and it's also a top of mind questions that I found out you guys have when you replied to my 4 question survey. So thank you very much. It also happens to be the topic that my students and I are covering this week on starting a business and in my e-course, online course called Right Business, Right Life. So let's dive in. Essentially, when it comes to funding your business, it may not be as difficult as you think it is. You essentially have 3 paths to funding your business. The first one is, of course, self-funding, and we'll talk about this in greater details. There are several options within that category. The second one is equity, trading equity in your business. That's also another path. And finally, the third option, the third path to funding your business is debt. Taking some debt in exchange of capital to launch your startup or your acquisition or the turnkey business that you want to develop. So, um, self-funding, of course, cash, savings. Most of us who start a business use our saving, or at least a portion of it, or use it as a method to get a loan. So you may want to use some cash to use as a down payment, for example, to get a loan, an SBA loan, or some other form of loan. But you can also, in part of self-funding, if you do have a retirement plan that you have access to, you can also use those funds in what we call a ROBS, which is a rollover for business startup. It's a totally legit way, and it's tax-free and penalty-free, which is supported by the government in terms of using your retirement funds instead of investing into the stock market or publicly traded options. You can use that into a C corporation, which is your own, for which you own 100% of the shares. Now, there are greater details about this. I'm not going to get into that, but there are pros and cons for both. So let's stay objective, and maybe this is a good way. It also allows you to get to profit sooner because you don't have to repay a loan. But and you retain the equity in your business. So that's an option. So that's in terms of self-funding. Now, another element of self-funding that we don't often think about, but it is real, is if you have a spouse or a partner who is willing and able to support your livelihood and your family or your life, and as a while you're ramping up the business and getting it to profits, that's also a method of self-funding. And in this case, it's funding the working capital that allows you to keep the lights on in your life and in your business. So that's it for that option. Now, the other option is trading equity. With angel and venture capitalists who, in exchange of equity in your business, are willing to bring some capital. An extreme example of this, of course, and I'm not saying it happens to everybody, but it's the lucky and daring first-time investors at Amazon. Many of them were friends and family of Jeff Bezos, and in exchange of a tiny percentage of shares of equity in Amazon, 1%, they gave $50,000 at the time for 1% in Amazon. And it was a risky venture at the time in 1999. But today, these daring and lucky investors, are worth, for each of their $50,000 original shares, are worth over $7 billion. That is a 14 million% increase in their investment. So That's extreme, but it's usually how it works. If it works with investing, trading equity in a business. So that's an example. But in terms of equity, it's not exactly equity. There's another option called crowdfunding. I'm sure you've heard of it. Crowdfunding, in this case, you're not trading equity in exchange of funding, but it's usually a good way to raise money for a cause or a creative product that you're coming up with. Maybe it could be a documentary, it could be a course, it could be a class, it could be, or maybe a really innovative product that you think is going to be really solving the problems or a problems that millions and billions of people might have. And in exchange of these small funds, $50, $200, or maybe even more, in exchange of that, you receive a gift of that particular product. So that's one way to raise fund as well. And then finally, the third option is also very popular. It's debt. In this case, there are many options in terms of using a loan, getting into debt as an instrument of financing a business. And here, I'll begin with the most popular option in debt funding is the SBA in the U.S., Small Business Administration loans. So the SBA actually does not provide a loan, but what they do, at least they no longer do that. They did early on a few decades ago. But what they do, they provide a guarantee to banks who are willing to give you, under certain conditions and certain terms, give you a loan. Of course, the banks, seeing that 70%, up to 70% of the loan that they provide you is backed by the federal government, they are very happy to do that. And then, the 30% remaining is usually the down payment that you will provide or the guarantee as a collateral that you will provide for the banks. So they don't take a whole lot of risk, but it's a very valid, very good way to fund a business from $150,000 to $5 million, for example. There are other types of loans that are typical commercial business loans that banks claim they have. In reality, those are not easy to get, and they often require a business, collateral or some. It's a little bit more of a myth, in my opinion. But if you can have access to that type of loan, that could be a good possibility as well. And finally, there's line of credits. It could be an unsecured line of credit. Of course, using your real estate as a collateral. It could also be a traditional loan where you refinance the equity in your home. But unsecured line of credit could also be similar to a credit card where you have excellent credit, at least 690 and higher, where you can provide or you can have access to an unsecured loan, from $50,000 or higher. So that's it for today. These are the three paths to funding a business. As you can see, if you examine them closely, you'll find that there might be some real possibilities for you depending on your business and what you want to do. Now, next week we are going to have not a live video this time. Next week is the last Thursday of the month, and on the last Thursday of each month, I'm providing you with a free class. And this free class is how to successfully break free from corporate and live the entrepreneurial lifestyle. So I hope you can join me. I'll be sending some links or putting some links here. If you have any questions about today's topics or about the free class next Thursday at noon Pacific, please send me a comment or email me at pb@openforbusinesslab.com. I'll be happy to answer your questions. So after the class next week, I'll have a gift for you at the end of the class, which if you stay until the live event, I'll be happy to give you that gift. But in any case, I'll be also sending you the replay. So if really is not a convenient time for you, sign up for the class and register, and I'll be happy to make sure that you have access to the replay. And at the end of this class, really what you'll find out is, number one, we'll discuss about funding a business in more details. We also talk about what are the three paths to business ownership that you may want to consider, and what are the pros and cons. Also, I'll share with you two typical traps that many people get into trouble when they start a business for the first time. And finally, we'll discuss a roadmap, how you can possibly start a business part-time or to become a full-time business owners, and maybe even later on become an absentee business or semi-absentee business owner. So we'll talk about all that. I hope to see you next week at 12 noon Pacific time. And cheers to building a life we love. Take care.